Ed decides.
Well, you got people that are, looking for it.
Okay, yeah, okay. People are looking for it, and it's live now. Now, what I wanted to talk about, and I was kind of just asking others' opinions, but Ed was like, "No, let's get on there and talk about it on here." So, what I'm going to talk about ahead of time, before the normal opening, is this September 11th of 2019. I had an epiphany while I was listening to the corporate President Trump uh, talk about 9/11 and to give his speech. It hit me all of a sudden. Whoever you thought did 9/11, whether you thought it was an inside job from our federal government, whether you thought it was the Nazis or the Taliban or your cousin Jimmy down the street, whoever you think did it, what happened was when it happened, it succeeded to a degree. Now, here's my reasoning on this. When that happened, that was 18 years ago. Everybody was shocked. Some people were not shocked, such as a certain president reading books to children, and he just like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever, and kept reading. Anyways, but still, effectively, most of America was shocked and scared. And that fear is what was the real weapon. Because that was 18 years ago. Now, today, we have the children that were alive at that time. Their parents were too afraid to be a parent at that time. They were more concerned about what's coming at us, what's this, what's that. They didn't give those children at that time a moral compass in any direction. They shoved more religion down their throats. They shoved, you got to be free down their throats. They just let them do whatever the hell they wanted for 18 years. And now we have a refugee who holds an office as a representative of a state, and she sits there and goes, somebody did something. Well, gee, I'm sorry. As far as I know, you're associated with them, so of course you're not going to out them. And then you've got all these Green New Deals. You've got all these, I'm 357th removed toaster strudel identifying as a diode or whatever gender you want. There's two genders. Technically 3, and the third one's a hybrid because there is hermaphrodites. It's a genetic anomaly, but it does happen. But science that we know of now proves. But the problem is we got kids going everywhere, not knowing which direction to go, because 18 years ago, the fear instilled in those parents during that time carried on to the complete disruption of the current young generation of adults that they don't even have a clue what they're doing. They don't even know which direction they're going. If you look at the Green New Deal, it's all a fundraiser to give them more power. It's not going to help the environment. In fact, America is one of the lowest carbon counts in the world. So effectively, guys, 9/11 worked. So I'm going to have to tell y'all, nut up or shut up. You either start teaching your kids, like I'm teaching mine, the direction to have strong values, strong moral compass, go for whatever they believe in. Like the song says, you got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. Well, look at the Green New Deal and all the Democrat, the really far, I'm not even going to say left or right because they don't even know they're left from right. They're so radicalized. They want socialism and communism. Gee, they want us to be England or Russia. I'm sorry? No. They don't stand for anything. They go with whatever anybody else says. That's what happened 18 years ago during 9/11. At least that's the epiphany I had. And today is Saturday, September 14th, 2019. Sorry it was a bit late of a start, but guys, nut up or shut up. You either do something or you shut up and go hide under your mama's skirts. Ed, why don't you take it away?
Okay, I agree with you on that one. And we appreciate you all. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're going to get in some information I got to pull up here again. But I want people to realize what the truth is in this country. You know, that's one thing that people don't comprehend what the real facts are. We're going to get into part of that this evening, dealing with the, the corporation. Because let's talk about the corporation. You know, and before we get into that, yeah, I'm still having issues with my home. When I was in the hospital in the ICU, my house was robbed by my court papers and stuff, and that was all they took because they didn't want me to file the criminal charges on them. And so that's the one thing that I found out, that the local police were on my property when I was in ICU. So I won't get into that until I get my papers filed. But anyhow, I want to get into the Act of 1871 that formed the corporation of the British government. And you guys got to realize, okay, there's two constitutions to this country. One is called the Treaties and the Native Structure of the Constitution, and the other one is called the British government, called the Roman Catholic Church. And when you go to these Article I courts, you're going in and praying to their God, called the Bible. That's a fact. And so, and I know I've been through this, and I've had some interesting conversations with some very interesting elected and public officials here lately over it, and they agree, they know it, because that's what an Article I court is. It's a tribunal court. It's a British tribunal court. Has been proven and written by even Judge Roberts, which I got to try to find that again, because I had that information until my other computer crashed, which sort of stunned me, because it crashed and restarted, and it put Windows 10 on my damn computer, and I don't like Windows 10, because that's tied right into the CIA compared to Windows 8. So, but when it gets into this corporation, the corporation is called the United States of America. And so when you use that terminology, you're talking about the corporation, so you're agreeing to the corporation bylaws. And that's a fact. That's one thing that was just explained to me again, and I knew it, but I asked some questions and they explained it. And so this is what we're really living. And so when you're going by a corporation and you're asking permission from your God, that's the problems we have. Free men don't ask permission and they don't bow their head. That's the one thing that, we have a history of, people bowing their head in war, and we see it in movies, but we know the British do it all the time, but we've seen some stuff when the Vikings do it, praying to their God. And other countries, going back in history, praying to their God, which I don't have an issue with that, because that was the main part of the Constitution that gives you the right of your religion belief. It does not give you the right to dictate your religion in this country, because this is the problem we're having right now, and people are not educated and are not intelligent to comprehend this. That's why the Muslim law is trying to take over, because everybody's going, oh, well, they have a right to their religion. Well, if you actually read history, we banned the Muslims out of this country, and that started with Jefferson. And see, the reason why Jefferson did that, because he had to form the Navy and the Marines to protect our soil and country. That's real history. Why don't you listen to the song? And too bad we didn't have that prepared to play the Marine song, because that would be a good song for you folks to listen to comprehend what the actual words mean compared to what people are trying to tell you in elected and public servants, or trying to explain it. The Democratic Party are starting to try to explain it to their constituents. And so it's like they've been rewriting history, folks. This is a fact. Oregon has done it. Oregon in 2000, even with Cape Brown and the Bar Association, wrote that they own your house, they own your children, they own everything. That was 2000. So unless you file your rights and claim it, that's why they robbed my house, because I had the stuff. And they knew what I was doing, and so when I was in ICU, that happened the way it did. And I know they were freaked out because I lived again. You know, I went in for heart issues, and so I was in the ICU heart, unit. And so at least I didn't have to go through severe stuff this time. But this is the issue we are living with, folks. So when it comes to the Civil War, and people don't comprehend the Civil War, and I got to say, Prager University, I just watched the thing they had on YouTube, and they actually got it. I've been after them, preaching to them, tell the damn truth about the Civil War, and they did. Because people don't realize when the Civil War happened, they kept the Democrats at the time of the Civil War in office. And they were preaching the Bible and trying to shove it down the north side and the native side and saying we should bow our head to this book that they believe in. Well, that is not natives. Natives believes in the dirt, soil, earth, the birds and the food resources called deer, elk, raccoons, whatever else there is beside fish. So when it comes down to this point, that people need to start comprehending the facts of the real world compared to the fantasy they're living. Because I was watching this group that this guy is running. I think his name is Joseph. I've got to find his information. I posted it up on all the four Facebook walls, new.Oregon or Oregon Trackers, United States for elected and public employees. Brain fart. I got too many things running through my head. United States for America, Republic, elected and public employees or public servant oversights. All right, and we have the recall Cape Brown, the original recall on Cape Brown. I filed a month and a half before everybody else did, but I filed it lawfully, not legally. So you couldn't vote on it unless that it went through lawfully and had to be done by lawful natives to autograph it, not sign. Signatures are dead man's words. An autograph, and you have to certify your autograph signature, and that makes sure that you are a living man or woman. And you have to sign it in red. You can't sign it or autograph it, in any other color. Because black is dead man's hand, blue is maritime, silver is knight, and gold is king and queen. So it's like learn what your colors of your ink or what you're autographing or signing with. Because this makes a big importance of what your ink color is you're using. Because back then, most people signed, and if you ever watched the real movies, going back and even the British movies, you always saw that they always used wax when they sealed their letters, when they had their little jesters went across the country. Everything was always done in red and blood back then. It was not done the way it is today because they had to make sure they knew who it was. And that's the point that we're not comprehending today. And so when these people are sitting there doing this stuff and not comprehending this reality of what's going on, it is so infuriating that people are not paying attention to what's going on. And you think that you have all these rights. Well, you don't have rights. You have privileges. And that's Article 1 tribunal courts because you're still under the British administrative rule. And especially your birth certificate filings are under the British administrative rule. And so when you think that you're talking about your so-called rights, what rights are you having? Did a judge, some people say, did a judge grant it? Well, you have to make sure the judge has an oath to the Constitution, not the corporation Constitution. And you have to make sure he has an insurance bond and structure filed with Washington, D.C., and the state that he is a lawful judge, not a legal corporation judge. There are two different structures of the system, and people are not getting it. And when it comes to even your taxes, they ship your taxes. State and federal income tax don't come to this country. They go to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico decides where they're going, and that goes to the British government and to, the Roman Catholic Church, the Pope. which I did file on the Pope, and I filed on his bloodline back in 2013 for racketeering, fraud, and extortion. And then when I filed on that, all of a sudden he comes out and says, oh, corporations, and we already know that he came out with the corporation fraud and everything. Well, you file on these men and women. I filed on their souls, and I sent it to Rome to file on their souls, and to England to file on their souls. They believe in that structure. I mean, you know, and so if they believe in what they believe in, you have to go but what they believe in and open their eyes to it with other education. So our country right now is under de facto government. Doesn't exist. It's not real. It's not lawful. It's not legal. And so when you start looking at what's really going on in our structure compared to what we're being doctrinized and told and lies and by the mainstream media and what's going on in the circumstances. See, this is the point that people's got to do proper education with their children. Not guesstimate, not teaching them religion, because religion is to be taught at home. And it's not to be taught against the child. It's supposed to teach them that, hey, here's some of the history that what we've learned or what we've heard, because we don't know who wrote the book. You know, that's like, we go on, I agree with the Ten Commandments, but the other point is, who did the Ten Commandments? We're told Jesus did it or God did it. But who really did it? See, that's the point where I always say is like, everybody goes, religion. Who, what, why, and how? Who's your God? Why is your God? How is your God? And then we know that other people will say that the preachers, teachers, and everybody is not teaching the Bible correctly. Well, that's an interpretation too. And that is the point that we're living with these interpretations of how we're supposed to educate our children. Right and wrong. I mean, it's disgusting that people get brought up in personal greed. And remember, the District of Columbia is only 10 square miles parcel of land, and that cannot change. They've changed it administratively, and they've done it, I think it's 30 square miles now. But it's only 10 square miles, technically, realistically. Well, they can do any administrative rules that they're doing because we're getting screwed by them anyways. And so that's the point is that, the de facto government of 1871 is unconstitutional, or no, as I always like to say, I don't like using unconstitutional, but under no constitutional authority to do so. And so when we start looking at what these things are pertain to you and I, and how they affect your home, and how they affect your religion, and how they affect your beliefs and your upbringing. Now, my belief is, native. I believe in the dirt, soil. I see it. I know it. I can taste the soil. I can taste the meat. I can taste the fish. But the other part is all, fabricated. It's like the same thing that the so-called debt. The debt is owned by the British government. The Rothschild family is the main holder of the so-called debt, but that debt is to, not Americans. That is to the immigrants that come over from England, other countries, and any immigrant that's working in this country. But technically, immigrants cannot work in this country because immigration can't have a job in this country. But the Democrats push this away and push it through, and that all started with Jimmy Carter. The main push on that was Jimmy Carter, how he got elected, because he brought all the Cubans over and gave all Social Security in exchange for their vote. That's real history, folks. That is a fact. And you can type it up and you can look at it. I mean, I've done it. We put it up, and I've had it out on my websites and pages for years. And so this is the point, is knowing what the truth is. So when you're going by the United States, called the capitalization of a corporation, and that's the same thing that lawyers and attorneys do. And everybody says, well, a lawyer is not an attorney. Black Law Dictionary says the same thing. So does Bouvier. So, and I haven't seen an honorable lawyer in my life yet. Because attorneys, they don't give a shit about you or your children. They care about rape, robbing, and pillaging, because without that, they wouldn't have a job. You know, it is just pissing me off that these people get away with this shit, and people sit there and go, "Oh, it's okay, pray to God." You know, I get so frustrated when people tell me to pray to God, you know, and what is God going to do for me by praying? Nothing. You got to realize he ain't going to do nothing for you or me by praying. The only thing that happens is by actions. Actions speak louder than words. We all grew up listening to that. And so when these constitutional men and women that claim they're constitutional public servants and elected public servants, if they're not honoring the Constitution under Title 5, I believe it's 2332, that's their oath of office to this country under the Constitution and the treaties. So the only way they can receive an income off the 1933 Bankruptcy Act that created the de facto dollar that gave them employment, because prior to that, we used to have greenbacks, and they were backed by gold and silver, not by myth that our money is done today. And so when these things are going on, they're committing treason. And so when you put your letters together, incorporate this stuff. Well, and see, that's the one thing is that a sovereign is designed and brought up as the highest, defined as one chief or the highest supreme. The supreme power in power. That means dealing with your court systems too. So when I have made that stupid thing like everybody else did, oh, I'm a sovereign citizen, until I realized the moronic statement I was saying as a sovereign citizen. Either you're sovereign or you're a citizen. And a citizen has no rights. Doesn't matter, you know, what you think. A citizen and national or nationalist have no rights. You know, read FDR's filing, what he did in his structure with the baby books and all that when he did the birth certificate bond, and I believe that was in 1933. It was set up in 1911, but his thing went through in 1933. That Executive Order 2040 that says that all nationals and all citizens are members of the corporation called Washington, D.C. Corporation. And so when you file this stuff, when you're filing a criminal charge on your elected and public employees, don't forget you have to file it in Washington, D.C. as well. Because the Washington, D.C. governs over your mayor, city council, governs over your county commissioners and your council there, your board members. And it even goes on to, like, the state has board members of your financial departments and stuff. And that's what you want to do. It's like I've been going out trying to get the board members of the financial for Lincoln County. Oh, boy, and I'm getting that finishing to send that letter, but they're all panicking. Why do you want that, Ed? Oh, why do you want that? Because they're a nonprofit agency. And I'll get into that next week after I get this other thing done. But you guys got to realize that all your elected and public employees are nonprofit agencies. And so they have to be accountable. And so that's the one point that is bringing these things up. And the most important thing, remember, any elected and public servant or contractors of said government agencies cannot be sovereign. The police department comes out and says, oh, we're sovereign. No, they're not. They lie. Remember, police departments and cops lie. That's their job. It's like an attorney, lawyer. They lie. Well, I mean, you know, even when I was kidnapped and held for ransom back in 2013 and 14, you know, I got the YouTube video up with a so-called attorney going, hey, you know, why did they kidnap me and stuff? He goes, well, they're charging you with interfering with an officer. They can't charge me for interfering with an officer because he doesn't have authority. That's the law. He's a public servant. He violated his Constitution and treaty. So when I started putting the paperwork together, 3 of the cops resigned immediately, left the state. See, and I've done that before in the past where I file on these cops and they just leave the state and they leave no trails because, you know, your local public servants will cover up for them because they have to. That's their administrative rules. Like I said, people, you got to read these administrative rules. And if you don't read the administrative rules, you have no idea what they're doing and how you could combat them, because you have to use their administrative rules against them. You have to bring it up. Is this what your administrative rule says? Is this what you're supposed to comply to? And if you don't comply to your administrative rules, is this the servitude that you get the reaction to of fines, jail time, or anything else? And if you notice one thing, I think we have over 150 new federal judges now. And most of them are Republic. And that's the one thing, is that people are seeing changes. But you need to help the change in this country. Because if you don't help your elected and public employees who are honoring their oath of servitude, that's why the Democrats have screwed this country up for the last 50 years, since after World War II. That's like when they let all the Germans in this country, and, like Johnson & Johnson. Remember, that corporation is all from Germany. And so when they let these people into this country and they give them free rights and free money and free businesses, look at what Johnson & Johnson is now being sued over, talcum powder, because talcum powder is a deadly cancer. And they just came out with that here in the last couple of years, but they've been keeping it a secret for a long time. And so when you start seeing these things of what they're doing to you, this is the problem that's going on. It's like 9/11. The gentleman has an excellent point. When all that happened, everything stopped around it. The kids were not being taught. The schools failed their education to the system by teaching the separation of Republican and democracy. Because we're a Republican form of government. We are not a democracy. Democracy means rape, rob, and pillage, and you can get away with it so long as you pay off the right man or woman or the right religious group. And that's the one thing that you guys got to realize, that, you can buy your way out of trouble. And now when they put a bail on you, and you can skip on bail, but you have to make sure that you don't have a bail bond involved. You got to pay it all in cash, their debt notes. And so you pay the crime off, and that's technically what it does. They won't tell you that, but it does. It pays the crime off. They said a bail, you paid the bail, so you paid the system. Here's your money. I go. And that's been, even murderers have even done that and walked free. And that's in history. But nobody wants to tell you about the real history. So when you got an unlawful form of government called a de facto government that is dictating to your children how to blow their nose, and then, what was it? One of the states came up that got a letter, if you did not vaccinate your child, they're going to come in and arrest you. And you can't do that. But those parents, and I've talked to some of them that are finally filing charges, and the state backed off on them. But the point is, you got to file charges on these men and women. Everybody says that, you got to file a complaint. A complaint is a whiner. So because the real history of government today is based upon Roman civil law and admiralty maritime law. And that is divide the rights of the king. That is the divine right of the king. And that is the law of the seas. And that's what's running your country right now. And see, everybody keeps going, I have a constitutional right. And I got to quote a friend of mine. What constitutional rights do you have? Do you have it signed or notarized by a judge? Have you filed in one of your court cases in court? Because, see, the one thing is what they have personally done is done this deliberately, is to make sure that everything's done on a case-by-case situation. And see, if you file a class action lawsuit, they could throw that out, and that means everybody loses. Unless everybody writes their own individual criminal lawsuit on them. And as long as one is accepted, one wins, then the rest of them could follow. Because they can't go against discrimination on that because they already proved the fraud. So it's learning how this corporation works, the United States codes. So that's the one thing that when it comes down to capitalization, this goes to Title 28, 3002, 15, A, B, C. And that says that the United States is a corporation. And everybody goes, we're a government agency. Yeah, you are, the British government. Why do you think it's called the federal government? When you look at the word federal government, what comes up? The British government. Federal means the British government. And so this is the point. Look at real history. And a corporation is the empire of the United States British government. under Roman civil law, outside of the Constitution. And so this is the point when you start reading this stuff and you start comprehending what the real truth is. It's like taxes. Taxes are illegal income tax. And remember, even when you pay property taxes, a fine, anything that you pay in the court, do a 1099 form, an income form. It's called income form. So you want them to prove that income, because 90% of everything that you pay in this country is not income. They don't record it, so they pocket the money and go party on you. And that's a reality. Rape, rob, and pillage. So we are living this reality. And we've been living this after the Civil War. Now, I started seeing extreme changes after the 1980s in this country. And it got really bizarre after Clinton was elected. And that's the one thing that you got to realize. After Clinton was elected and signing over your Social Security over the Queen of England, what he did, and if you go back to the original structure, it was not a government corporation. It was a private insurance bond. And I can't remember the actual company that was the founder of it. I think it was American. I have to think about it. But the original company, and then they sold out to the corporation, and they sold their paperwork and stuff to the corporation, and that was done in 1911, if I'm not mistaken. And I know I had the paperwork, and I filed it, and I used to have the paperwork in my house, but apparently if it is a fact that my house was raided when I was in ICU, that explains a lot. Because all they went after is my paperwork and my court filings. Nobody says, oh, you shouldn't talk about it. I want to talk about it. Because you guys got to realize that this is what they do. And until you comprehend it, because I meant, shit, oh, that's right, I didn't die 3 weeks ago when I was in the hospital in ICU again. And I've already been dead 13 times, and I was close to going into cardiac arrest, but by the great spirit, and I decided, nope, I have to leave the hospital, and that's what I did. I got up.
Unmuted.
And everybody's looking at me going, what are you doing? And it's like, I have to leave because this is ridiculous. Because nobody's getting this stuff. And this is the frustration that we're not comprehending. I mean, the one thing is, everybody's going after Trump about what he's doing with the public lands. Well, get off your damn ass and file on the board members. I've told you this before. He even told you on NBC, CBS, ABC, all the news channels. It's out of my hands. It's up to you people to do it. Because I'm running a corporation. I'm not running you. And once you start comprehending that he's running a corporation, then you start getting this stuff up. You know, you give this stuff up all the time. And then you blame somebody else. And that's the one thing. I'm not blaming everybody else. I'm going after the people who did it to me. But that's the one thing is allowed the mentally ill. You know, they can't be touched with. The mentally ill and the disabled are supposed to be protected by a corporation, so that way we're not, taking advantage of more. Yeah. Well, you got to remember, the lawyers and attorneys, they don't give a shit. The judges don't give a shit because they want the court cases so they can make revenue off the debt note.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. Go ahead.
My wife reminded me of another point I was wanting to make.
Go ahead.
We can't, they can't grant titles, right?
Yep.
Well, you were talking about mental health and everything. You know, ADHD is a title. ADD is a title. Bipolar is a title. All those are titles.
Well,
they've been given everybody titles, and it may be a mental thing, but it's still a title.
Mm-hmm. And the one thing is, with ADHD in 1970 to 72, I was one of the original guinea pigs for Cal Berkeley and St. Mary's Hospital in San Francisco. Right down the street from Fulton Street was the major hospital, St. Mary's, the Christian hospital. And I was one of the original guinea pigs. I remember I used to take the bus going from my house on 2nd Avenue down there. And when I was, 5 to 6, 7 years old, I was taking a bus through San Francisco. And everybody's going, oh, you shouldn't have done that because of how rude and how criminal it was back then. It's like, you people don't even get it. It wasn't criminal because if somebody attacked a little kid, you know, you end up with 4 or 5 guys that would take him out, and sometimes the bakers would just take him out for fun because they wanted somebody to beat up, which I can't complain on that one because, you know, sometimes you got to, you know, teach people the education. But see, the 14th Amendment was never ratified, nor could have been ratified. The only thing was the last one was the 13th Amendment, and the correct ratification says lawyers and attorneys cannot be in the courtrooms because the courtrooms were supposed to be run by grand juries, and a judge is supposed to be the mediator. That's it. The judge doesn't have authority to tell you, and I know that because I went through the Will and Gaskin case here in Oregon, where Lipskin, the judge, went after everybody and telling the jury, and I was in the room when he's telling the jury, you can't give that verdict out. You got to find him guilty. And he's yelling and upset because they found him not guilty and awarded him $500 million. I know. I was there. I was participating in all that court case. I was participating with everything with the House and Senate with it. I'm the one who brought him into the House and Senate, per se. You know, and that's the one thing that there's videos out there where people are talking about the truth of it. And the 14th Amendment became, how it became the property of the corporation and enslaved you by silence. Because the 14th Amendment did enslave you because you didn't file your race. Because the 14th Amendment, if you actually read it correctly, separated lawful natives versus legal citizens. That was in the 1800s they were already doing this. Because the Democrats were doing all this stuff so that way they keep the banking going and the trains going and all their commercial structure going. You know, and if you really read history, that's when they put in the trains, and what do? They shot the natives every time the train was going. Or the buffaloes, they thought it was funny. They thought it was cute. We could wipe it out. And the buffaloes, what they almost made extinct, that's what destroyed our country because that was one of our main food resources besides deer and elk. You know, let me tell you, it takes a lot to clean a skunk out where you can eat it. And I've eaten skunk before. And it's interesting. Let me just put it that way. But that's the one thing is really frustrating that a lot of brave men and women who actually brought things forward in this country have been either assaulted, shut up, or killed. And I know. I've lived on both sides of the coin of that one, and by the grace of the Spirit, I'm still here. So when it comes down to your corporation beliefs and the structure that you're living in, which you're thinking you're living, you better reevaluate what you're doing, because if you claim that you're a democracy democratic, that means you don't believe in it because there's no such thing as democracy. You know, everybody says, oh, we need a democracy to vote. No, democracy to vote is only for elected and public employees. Read the damn original paperwork. Elected and public employees and registered church members are the ones who could vote, and they could only vote in the corporation that has no effect to we the people. And that's a real fact, folks. And we have the proof, and I've put the proof up over the years, and it's interesting that I've been going through Facebook, and I see some of my old posts come up for the last almost 10 years. You know, even from other judges that I filed, and people are getting it and reading it and going, oh, is this real? And so, yes, I do respond back to people when they respond to me. But the federal government is a corporation. You getting this point now? And that means the departments all have a commission and board. And the board members, all board members of every corporation, even the cities of your mayor and the city council, your mayor and city council are personally liable with their assets, their homes, their jewelry, their children. Because when you're in a corporation, they own your children. That's called the birth certificate registration. That's why I always recommend that people file on the hospital, put your paperwork in, leave with the birth certificate, and then file for your bloodline rights within 30 days, because by law it says if you don't file in 45 days, the state can claim your child as property of the corporation of Washington, D.C., of the state. And so when you register your kid with a state corporation called the Secretary of State, you're giving your kid over to the state, and you're saying you're not a responsible parent. You don't want your children. That's how the state could come in when the state comes in without a warrant and takes your kid. And if they got a warrant by a judge, they're saying, oh, you're a corporation member. We could steal your kid. So if you do anything, we can react to it. Because you didn't file to own your kid. You didn't claim your child. This is a fact. It's all in the laws. You know, the mother abandons her child at birth when she signs over your rights over the state when she registers you. Because technically the mother is supposed to register the child with the state, not the father. They do accept the father, but technically it's supposed to be the mother. And that's in our administrative rules. And that's why I'm always suggesting to people, read the administrative rules. And everybody goes, oh, that doesn't apply. And I said, and that's why I always, when I write my stuff, I file back with them with their administrative rules. Is this true? Is this, you're supposed to do this? Are you supposed to do that? And that's the one point that we need to make sure that people are comprehending on this stuff. It's like taxes. You know, I mean, I'm getting ready to deal with some things on taxes probably coming up. I'm filing on the city or the county here this weekend. Because in the state of Oregon, you're not to register your manufactured home. It's called property. You own it, and that's by their own administrative rules. And it says don't register. Don't file your stuff with the state. It says it right in their own administrative rules that I have. And so when you start looking about your assets and your property and you start registering stuff, you know, your car, your titles and all this stuff, because a title doesn't mean anything. A title means permission from the king or the queen. That's called the Secretary of State in your state. You know, and this is the point. This is the structure that really gets to me, because the state of Oregon, like the state attorney Oregon, is billing to destroy this country called the birth certificate bond. He's filing this stuff on you. And so that's the point. And you got to remember, it's called the British Accreditation Registry to the King and Queen of England. And that's the August 17th, 1878, what do they call that? American Bar Association. An American Bar Association runs every bar association in your states. And that includes 50 states, because Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico, what they call the 51st state, that is not could even be put into the structure. But when you look at the structure for Alaska and Hawaii, Alaska is no man land. Hawaii is still living under the British rules. Why do you think the state of Hawaii still flies the British flag? And people go, oh, it's part of America. No, it's not. It's part of America Corporation. That's why they're flying that British flag. And I finally got a couple of groups in Hawaii finally starting to see the light on it. And so when you're sitting there going after and saying, I'm part of the group, you know, that's how they get you. And it's like, you know, this is the one thing that people don't get. Embezzlement of government property, 18 USC 641. Federal Treasury notes, and that includes your child. So that's how they're getting around this stuff. And immigration and foreign aliens of the democracy, they're not even allowed to vote. Immigration is not supposed to vote at all, period, end of story. The only ones who can vote is lawful natives and property owners only. And that's property owners. That's not renters or, you know, anything like that. That is the men and women who own the property or said soil, technically. So that is the point. And your personal property is your child, your car, your traveling, your fishing gear, your hunting gear. All that is personal property. And this is how they get away with rape, robbing, and pillaging. And this is structured under the Vatican. That is called the Christian mind control. And like I said, it goes under the Bar Association because the Bar Association still runs under the Vatican Christian Bible structure. It's run right by the Bible. And that's the saddest part. The American Bar Association has over 400,000 members just in the 50 states. And attorneys can't be in court. Technically, the only ones could be court is injured parties, injured men and women. And so that's the point. Is the association, like I said, was founded in 1878, and I believe the date was August 27th or August 17th. And that was after the Civil War, when they ended up with 2 constitutions. Because, like, if you read real history, the British says, hey, we're going to still send, this is back in the 1800s, we're just going to still send men and women just to shoot you. We own that property. We're claiming it. And people said, oh, well, they put a flag on this property, on the soil. I'm not using soil for it, property, or I don't want to use that, land, air, water, and sea is a better term. Oh, we're over here putting a stick in the ground and says we own it now. That's the same thing. I can't come into your home and put a stick in the ground in your home and say I own it. Any intelligent man or woman would shoot anybody who did that. You know, you have the right to defend your assets. And so this is the one thing with the requirements of satisfying gain admittance to the bar. And that is any elected and public employee, mayor, city council, county commissioner, your senators and congressmen. They're bar members, they're attorneys, they're lawyers, they're practicing law called statute, codes, and administrative rules. And that gives them the right to come in your home unless you start standing up to it. And the only one who's been successful in standing up into this stuff for the last 30 years has been Trump. But like I said, again, everybody's upset with Trump opening up public lands. Well, get off your damn ass, because Trump told you to get off your ass and file. You can't file against Trump, and you can't impeach Trump for it because he can't be impeached. Because you're allowing it. You didn't file the criminal charges. You can't sit there and blame somebody else for walking in and steal your property. And I can with what happened with the government, because I wasn't even in my home. I was in the hospital. You know, and these people are supposed to take an oath to protect your assets, but instead rape, rob, and pillaging is what they do. And so it hasn't changed going back even to, what do they call that, Christian Crusades. And remember, if you look in real history, Christian and Muslims were the same thing. And so the Muslims went one way and the Christians went the other, but they were still practicing so they confused the world, and that's in real history. They did that to keep you going, to keep you in trouble. You know, that's why Kate Brown is an attorney. She's an attorney, and she can't even be in office by law. By their law and by the Constitution. And I put the Constitution up of Oregon all around. Because, see, the Constitution of Oregon even says that you cannot be taxed on your property. 1846 Constitution, and it was the 1859 amendment that I've been passing out, even says the same thing in the amendment, but they've changed the amendment because people don't want to believe the truth. Because people are scared to be free. They're terrified because they wouldn't know what to do. They wouldn't know how to feed themselves, wipe their butt, do anything else because they don't know what freedom is. You think you're free, but you're paying all this structure to them. You know, what is it called? You're paying them for business licenses. Which the one thing is, you know, 30 years ago, I didn't have business license when I ran my business. See, that's the one point, you know. I had an umbrella bond to cover that, and that's how you used to do it, and I don't know what the umbrella bonds are like now today. Well, back then, we had umbrella bonds that I started using back in 1978, even for my car insurance, besides AAA insurance. But back then, AAA was really cheap for a teenager. And I mean real cheap. I think for me, on my own policy back then, I was paying $258 a year. And that was for $1 million of coverage. And so when people look at the structure of what's going on around you, start reading the stuff. I mean, I've been watching this deal earlier that they got this guy that wants to run for the state Senate. And I sent these people a whole bunch of information and saying, okay, I'd like to contact this guy if he's real. He's saying he wants to be what Constitution and, reform the Republic. You can't reform anything, you idiots. You either go by what those been reading or what's written. You don't reform it. You don't come up with something new, because everybody goes, oh, we need to rewrite the Constitution. If you rewrite the Constitution, everything's dead. You killed a living document. I mean, even Judge Scalia says that the Constitution is a corporation contract. And it is. It's a corporation contract of your public employees that's supposed to separate from the natives and the we the people. And I don't like we the people because that can be classified as a corporation too. So it's like reading all this stuff and standing out and comprehending what the truth is. And that's what we're supposed to be teaching the children, is honesty, truth, facts, not hearsay. And so it really disturbs me when I watch these, political stuff that's going on right now. They're getting ready to go for the running next year. And everybody's talking about keeping everybody in the system. Nobody's talking about, oh, you have a right to travel. The law says this. And that's why I want to talk to this Joseph guy. Here's what the Oregon state law says. Are you going to support it or not? And that's what we need to bring to these people. Are you going to stand up for the administrative rules that are written to protect we the people, or we the natives? But then another thing I'm reading, that native is supposed to be a corporation. Yeah, this is something that's new to me, and I'm like, wait a minute. Because I remember going back to the native treaties. And native was not a corporation under the treaties. So they're changing things as we are living. I can tell you that they have rewritten a lot of history that you go on the thing, and a lot of that was rewritten when Obama was in office, and that's a fact. So how do you want to start to solve the problems? And then the other part that we can solve the problem is very simple. Their corporation, file on their income. Because corporations cannot have income. Especially government corporations. They have to report everything because they're a nonprofit. Remember, all your government agencies are nonprofit. Each and every one of them are nonprofit. And so, that's what I filed. That's why they robbed my house. Because I've got that filed in Washington, D.C. with criminal charges on them as a nonprofit. And I sent that around to everybody. So, and I know they got it. They're freaking out over it. Because they ended up getting numbers on it. So, that's the one thing that when you start realizing that we need to stand up on their nonprofits. If they're not doing it and recording their income on their 1099 forms, that's a federal crime by the IRS. And trust me, I've been reading, and there's been another 6 or 7 police departments shut down in this country. Non-existence just in the last, 7 months. Because people filed on them. And that's what you need to do, is file on your public servants. And everybody goes, what happens if they don't have a job? How are they going to feed their children? Oh, come on, folks. They don't give a damn about you, how you're feeding your children. Why are you caring about them? And please don't give me this, oh, God, we got to pray and we got to, See, that's the problem. Instead of standing up being men and women, you bow your head and you become weak. And that's the problem with our country. We've become so weak. With all this, including with transgender. I don't give a shit if you want to think you're whatever you are. But that doesn't mean you go change it in the legal system to, oh, I'm a man now when I'm a woman. Or I'm a woman, now I'm a man. I'm a man, now I'm a woman. It's like people are doing that. And we've got elected and public employees that are doing it right now in the country. Changing their status. And now, to me, that falls under identity theft, the way I read identity theft. Because you stole somebody's identity and created a new one to steal somebody's identity that was already there. And so this is the point that people, you got to look at how these things are controlled. And then you wonder why, and most of the people think, oh, my house is robbed. I would say most of the robberies in this country, I would say 60, 70% of it is done by elected and public employees just to keep the calls going. I got people going, well, your house is robbed. You need to call the police. How am I going to call the police when they're the ones who stole my stuff? Not once, not twice. So you can't call the ones that are robbing you because they ain't going to do a damn thing. That's why I'm filing my paperwork the way I'm doing it, making it that way. Because you can't go to the devil and say, oh, I can plead. Because the devil's created by man. Literally. And you could even type that where Baptists and ministers, 50-year ministers are coming out now and saying about the Bible and Satanism. It doesn't exist. It's all mind control. And for the first time, some of these religious people are standing up, waking up to the truth that they've been frauded. They've committed fraud, and they admit to it. And so I guess you could sort of say that's repentance, because they're admitting to it now. And so I've had a couple conversations about 6 months ago with a few people on it that were involved. And it's like, okay, you want to make amends. How are you going to grow food on your church? How are you going to feed your congregation? Are you collecting water for them if something happens? Because you're a congregation and nobody else can come in and take your stuff without a warrant or guns, or arms. So that's the point, is that how come the churches? Now, in my town in Toledo, I got to give the Girl Scouts a great pat on the back because they're planting food around my town. And you got to realize that when you got nonprofits, and they are nonprofit, but they're a nonprofit that's actually doing something for the community. They're providing food. Not food banks and everything, because food banks are supposed to be all commercialized. That's what a food bank is, a commercial industry. Nonprofit commercial industry. And remember, all nonprofits are commercial industry. So when they're sitting there and putting this stuff out to the general public, going, oh, we're saving you and we're writing this off and bring your food to us. Well, the point is, why bring your food to them? How come you're not sitting there and giving it to your neighbors? You know who your neighbors are hungry. You know who your neighbors need it. Give them to your neighbors that are legally, I hate using that word for people in our country, because by law we're not supposed to feed them, shelter them. That's the law. Read it sometimes. I put it out, even put out the structure with Trump has the right, because that goes back to 1778, dealing with, Indian treaties. Because technically going back then, it was supposed to be only 50,000 every other year that was allowed in this country at all. And not only that, they had to pass an exam by their, back then was called their communities or townships, that if they didn't meet the criteria, they were shipped out on the next boat. And back then, they actually did it. And that's the one thing they stopped doing it after Ellis Island, and especially when the Democrats came into running this country after Nixon. And that's why everybody's panicking on Trump right now. I mean, when Trump sat there and said the 14th Amendment does not give you rights, I know, I sent it out to everybody, including, congressmen and stuff with him on it, proving it, and I even sent them their own congressional records proving it. So when you're sending them laws, and there are U.S. codes, and you're sending the congressional records, what are you supposed to do with that one? I mean, even Congress went through that in, I think it was June of 1967. And we have that up on the website, and I just passed that around to some people today. But June of 1967, and they admitted the 14th Amendment was not passed and immigrations are not allowed in this country. And that's a fact. I mean, this is the point that they have the paperwork out there, folks. And, with new.org and trackers and the producer, we're able to produce this stuff and bring it out to you. And so that, without a lot of stuff that we've been doing, and I know that we've had a lot of impact on things. I mean, I can see the changes, because, there's a lot of times where, even in that one case where the cop who finally got convicted for killing that Australian woman when he was an immigrant from Muslim country, I'm trying to remember which state that was. I think it was in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. I filed it with the board, and when I literally called these people up, the board members in the city and the state, and I said, how come this guy is getting away with this? Because you're not charging him. He committed cold-blooded murder. They're going, oh, he's a cop. And I said, no, he's not, because he's an immigrant. He has no authority. And it took him several years until recently where they finally convicted him. And there's been other things I've done that around the country, but I don't like to, bring a lot of stuff out, because that's what I like to do, what I did, until my house was robbed when I was in ICU back in August. But it's amazing that they get away with this stuff because people don't stand up. They say, oh, I love my child. No, you don't, because you ain't protecting your child. I've talked to many people over the years, and many, probably a couple hundred. Well, the cop showed up, and I said I had to give him my kid, so I just turned my kid over. And I was like, there's no warrant and a bench warrant, and it has to be issued by a jury? Grand jury? Oh, they just told me they could take the kid. And I got a video on YouTube with Lincoln County Sheriff arresting Christopher Walker, saying that, oh, I don't need a warrant. Nobody can tell me to arrest anybody. I can do anything I want. And you can listen to him on YouTube. I don't know if I think we might have that up on the Toledo page on new.org and trackers. But this guy, and I've got other videos where the sheriffs say, oh, we don't need a warrant. We can arrest anybody we want. Well, that's called kidnapping, assault, thuggery. Yeah, that is a word. And so when they get away with this stuff, it's your fault they get away with it. I'm watching these campaigns that people are running for office, so they're talking about rights. Oh, no, we want to restore this, and we want to, reform this. You can't rewrite the history that was put in our face to protect ourselves from the British government and the Spanish government. Because remember, the Spaniards and Britain were the ones who brought the Constitution to this country, technically, and that started back what they call in 1642. And I always have an amazing time when people say, oh, Columbus found America. Columbus never even got close to America. It was never even in this vicinity. That's why some of the states in this country have outlawed, and I mean outlawed, Columbus Day. So when you're watching this stuff happening, quit arguing with stuff. Learn why things are changing. Learn why people are standing up for the Constitution. Learn why it's so important to protect your bloodline. Educate yourself on this stuff. And try to get, when you get paperwork, try to get anything passed or before, basically, 1965, 1970, and earlier. Because you start getting in the 1980s when the Democratic Party, before they started swinging the votes and started running this country, and rechanging history, rewriting history. And that's what they're doing, rewriting history. Because they're writing it for the betterment of the corporation, and they're writing it for the betterment of themselves so they have a job. And when cops say, oh, I go to a ticket and I don't get paid for it, that's a lie too. They do get paid. They get paid their travel time, and if they're there for food time. See, all this stuff is paid. And then they deduct it off of what they call the tax deal, but actually it's a 501c3, so they're writing it off, and when you pay them, they're just pocketing the money. That's why a 1099 form, an income form, is so valuable. And you want to file that income form. I don't care what it says, but it says the limitation is $600. I'd still file it anyways, even for a quarter, because if you keep paying this stuff, even for 2 or 3 years, it's going to amount to $600. So you got the trail there. Prove your facts. And that's the one thing when it goes to court. It's only based on facts, not hearsay. And I watch a lot of court cases that people have lost because of hearsay. Because the damn public defender or their hired attorney or lawyer doesn't stand up for them. They don't give a shit. Trust me, I've known a lot of attorneys in my life. And in the 80s, I used to work for judges and attorneys. That was what they call a private contractor to them. So, and that's the point that, you know, this stuff is a reality of what a private contractor is. See, and even private contractors, which I did not know at the time, but nobody told me that because everybody was getting away with it in the 80s. And that was the one thing I didn't know. But we're supposed to register if you're a private contractor. I don't give a shit if you're changing the freon in a school district. You have to register as a foreign agent because you're a private contractor to a corporation called the government, the British government. Remember, your government is not what you think or who you think it is. It's called an Article 1 tribunal court. And remember, tribunal courts are on ships. Tribunal courts are mainly 6-man jury, or that's basically what it is. 6-man jury on a boat. Because if a woman was on a boat, they never got a right to say anything, and more than likely they got raped by every guy on the boat. They couldn't say nothing. So that was part of what they had to live when they were traveling from Spain or England. And they hoped they got here in one piece, or they didn't get thrown over. So they had to do what they had to do. And it's sad that women are put in that position. Even today, women are put in that position. You know, I listen to Christians all the time. I have listened to Christians in church proceedings, too. Oh, she's just a mother on welfare. Anybody can fuck her. It doesn't matter. She doesn't have no rights. She's on welfare. And that Christian men were saying this in church. It's one of the reasons why I haven't gone to church in decades. Because I'm listening to these people saying that, you know, human life has no value because I'm a Christian. That's the same thing when the Christians came over to this country, and I've argued with many Christians. You know, well, that's not the Christians we are. We don't participate in raping women and killing Indians. Well, what did you do? The Christians came over, raped and killed the Indians because they wanted to civilize us because we weren't wearing a top hat. We weren't dressing what they call appropriate. You know, I always wanted my deerskin outfit. I almost had it at one point, the material for it, until that got taken out of my house with my other jewelry stuff because I used to do jewelry. Semi-precious stones, silver and gold. And, well, that got stolen out of my house. And that one I know is my family members who did that one. You know, even some of my fishing gear I saw it in a pawn shop, but, you know. Of course, the owner ain't going to admit to it, but he's like, well, you know, you can definitely tell facial expressions and what happened. But you got to learn how to read people. Pay attention to body language. You know, are they really looking you in the eyes, or are they just sitting there looking at your side of your face? I mean, you got to learn how to read people. Start stepping out of the movie. Watch the production. And with that, I always recommend Interstate 60. Watch that movie. Please watch that movie twice. It'll explain your court system. It really does explain your court system. It's a comedy. It's got a lot of famous actors and actresses in it. But you need to step out of the movie and watch it. Participate and see what's going on. Participate in your life, in your neighbor's life, and see how they're doing things. You know, don't get into the wrapping up of playing the political game. Too many people get involved in politics and they don't even realize it, and the ones that realize it don't do it for anything but money. They don't do it to protect the children. I mean, I've watched many people even give up their children for money. And legally, they say, oh, you can't do that. But if you go through the tribunal courts and look at their history, you can sell your child. Don't forget, back in the 1800s, what did they do? They postal shipped children all across this country. And I think it was like $5.95 back in the 1800s to send your kid from New York to California. I think that was a little bit more expensive. But they actually shipped kids across the country in the postal carriers on the wagons and trains. Basically put a stamp on the kid and shove them out on the street. And that's what a lot of people are doing today still. Well, and human trafficking, that's called your birth certificate. So you're signing your rights over for your child, and then you wonder why the kid's having problems. Why they, counselors love this, and psychiatrists love it. That's why they got all the kids drugged up. And then they're realizing that these kids have been taking Ritalin for 10, 15, 20 years. Mentally, they're deranged. They're losing it. See, this is the one thing, is like you watch the TV commercials today, even on YouTube. Well, this medication, you take it, will give you liver, kidney damage, or, can stop your heart or kill you. They're telling you exactly what the medication does. But then again, if you take it, it might work for you. But if it don't work for you, don't hold us liable. And see, the men and women are liable, but see, you're going after the wrong people. Everybody goes, oh, I got to sue the drug company. No, you got to go learn how to sue the psychiatrist, the doctor, the hospital. The hospital members are personally liable. The board members are personally liable for everybody they hire. And I've got that information, too, out and up. This is the one thing that you got to realize, that all elected and public employees, hospitals are elected and public employees, technically. And they're all nonprofit agencies. But the one thing is, we need hospitals. That's the one thing that I agree with. Because without that and House 192, because remember, the hospitals write off on the nonprofit dealing with House Resolution 192, that gives you medical attention. And they do it. That's a reality. So when you get stuff in the mail, don't question it if you get something that says 00 on it. Be smart. Learn what the hospitals are doing for the native people. They're getting it. And what they're doing for some of the people in the general public, they're getting it. And if you have to, they say, oh, would you just autograph this? Nope, I'll sign it, and then you can have your write-off. But don't forget to put your write some reserves on that when you autograph it. I mean, I got a page that we've got, and maybe we should put that page up on the website that anybody can print it out. It's a red stamp page. But that's the one thing. You can put that in your agreement and put that into your structure, as even when you're doing Freedom Information Act for a local system. You can put that in saying, hey, I reserve my rights. Yes, it is a full page the copy, and you want to autograph it. And if you have your seal, and your seal is supposed to be your thumbprint, your right thumbprint technically, but if you don't have a right, you have a left, or if you don't have that, hopefully you got a toe. So, I mean, there are other ways of making your mark that is distinct from anybody else's. And so when we look at the history that we've got, how do we defend it? By fighting on it. One thing is nonprofits. You can file on them through the IRS. That's what I did on the city. So they're panicking right now. That's the reason why I believe that it was them that, after what I've heard locally here now that just came out, they're the ones that robbed my house, so that way they didn't want to go to jail. But it's already filed in Washington, D.C., so is the paperwork. They have the paperwork. Sorry to inform you that, but yeah. You didn't get it. You only got the copies. You didn't get the original. They had the original in Washington, D.C. That's why there's going to be a lot more investigations going on in the state. And so, I mean, I haven't even heard anything about the recalls, because there's still 2 recalls on Kate Brown. And I think they're getting down to the wire on it. You know, so, and I know one recall supposedly had over 300,000 signatures. But Kate Brown is trying to, she just changed the voting regulations. And now she's trying to change the recall regulations so that way they can't oust her out because she wants to be permanent queen. She's trying to change the election office so that way, because technically you can only serve 2 terms. Period. Doesn't matter. In the what is it? House member serves 2 members, a 2-year term, and Senate could serve a 4-year term. Oh, I got that backwards. House member is 4 years, and the Senate's 2 years. That's the law that was written way back in the 1778, and that was revised and redeemed in 1870. Was that 1878, and that was part of the Reconstruction Act, what they did of the 1878 refined deal of the Constitution, which I was reading to you earlier. And we'll have that up, and anybody wants that, you can always ask me, but I sent it out to most people, and I put it up on most people's information pages, so it is the whole thing. You got to pass this stuff out because you got to read this stuff. I mean, even when Donald Trump came out and said, oh, it's illegal to give your child a vaccination, and doctors are pushing for it so hard because they get they get commission off of every time they give anybody a vaccination, they get a commission on it. So it's money to them. And I'm in Blue Cross Blue Shield. They put up a deal that anytime the doctor does over 100 to 150 immunization, they get $40,000 a year bonus check. And that's for just 150 people that they give. And that's a hell of a lot of money that they get for giving that many people shots. But the other point is that to put some of that money on insurance, because when anybody files on them, not the corporation, they're liable, and they know it. They're not going to tell you that. I mean, you know, off and on for the last, since 2013, you know, I mean, I spent, almost 5 months in ICU. And I've talked to these people in and out of the hospital and going to deals, and we've talked to them. I've talked to them, but see, the point is they can't say anything because they know it's their job. And I've had them where like that, and I said, don't worry, I just want you to listen. I'm not going to try to push you on anything. I don't want you to comment because I'm not going to put them in a legal point of view by commenting, making a comment to it. So you got to remember, you have to protect these people too as well for the honorable men and women. And I believe there's starting to be more and more honorable women that are coming up. Like I said, I'm still amazed that there's been over 100 new federal judges. And there's a lot of judges that are not even in the media who are indicted and convicted over human trafficking, especially over children, DHS. I mean, L.A., the district attorney of the city of L.A. is just filing with the FBI and the CIA to go through the L.A., court cases dealing with human trafficking of children. And that was done by the present district attorney in L.A. who just did that. So, I mean, I just got contact with them, and I sent them a whole bunch of information, and I was impressed that they're going through it. And I said, hey, I'll provide you some stuff that might help you. And so, you know, everybody knows that I sent it to the FBI and marshals, too. And that's the one thing, when you do send your paperwork, send it to them too. Keep them busy. Even though that they are corporation members. But if they're honoring their oath of service, the Title 5, 3221, or 3651, you know, so long as they're honoring their oath of servitude. And if you don't know the word servitude, look it up. The servitude means that you basically bowing your head to the man or woman in front of you, that you're bowing the head to these men and women, showing your servitude like a man does or woman does to King or Queen of England. You know, I always have fun when I watch all these people say, I've been knighted. And it's like, okay, then how come you're living here? How come you're not in England? And then when you look at a lot of these movie stars and actors, they're from Canada or England. All your late-night TV hosts are all from England and Canada. They're not from this country. You know, I mean, even a Late Late Show with, I'm trying to remember his name. I mean, he's got over 20 million views and hits on his structure every week. And he's from England. And those views came from America on this soil, from people watch them. I mean, don't they even know what the Constitution is about? No. It's like Biden said, people don't give a shit about the Constitution. They don't care about this country. It's one of Biden's speeches. You know, and Biden is the front runner going for the election against Trump. Because they're making sure Biden is. And the only way that could happen is, well, people know. There needs to be a change in that structure. But if you're going to protect your children, protect your children. You know, it's like people say, well, my kid was taken because I sent it to school and they're supposed to protect. No, you didn't put any paperwork in that school to protect your child that they have to notify you. You didn't file criminal charges if they give up that child, did you? This is the whole point, is filing your rights and standing up for them. And the most important thing, read the stuff you're filing. Know what it is, because if a judge questions you on it, you have to know it. Or at least know the best words of it the best you can. You don't have to quote it by scripture of their administrative rules, but the judge's supposed to know generally what you're talking about and has to honor it. But that's an honorable judge. And the judges today, they don't give a shit. They want to rape, rob, and pillage, because every time they have you pay a ticket, they get more money in their retirement. I mean, it's disgusting when judges are retiring with anywhere from $750,000 to $5 million or $10 million a year for what they've done on their court cases. But remember, when these court cases go and you pay fines and all that stuff, it goes into their pocket, and that's how they increase their revenue, off of interest and dividends. Your interest and dividends. So, I mean, this is the problem that we've got so deeply in this country. And so, like we said, when we bring this stuff out to the general public, yeah, I take a lot of hits, but I'm still here. And there's a lot of honorable men that are elected and public employees that are honorable. So, you know, that's the whole point of keeping those elected and public employees honorable. And so they have to have their faith, just like you have your faith. I have my faith. You know, people go, what's your religion? The Constitution and the treaty, native treaties. And that's what my Constitution is. Well, I don't believe in religion. Religion is mind control to me. I've watched it. I've lived it. You know, including being an ordained minister, registered and filed, nonprofit. You know, so, I mean, that's the whole point. That's what I'm saying with nonprofit, because you're a nonprofit, the board members are the liable parties for the nonprofit. That means you're a CSD worker, and you're on the board member of the CSD. That means you're personally liable with your assets and your retirement funds. That's law. If you work in children's division, you're liable. I mean, I just sent out a whole bunch of information to one of the children nonprofits here in the state, and I was talking to a lady and explaining about the children and how this works and that works, and she's like, you're not serious, are you? And I said, let me send you the information, and why don't you read it yourself and prove me wrong, research it. So you got to remember, most of these people, their schooling that they got for the last 35 years, they're not educated. They're mind controlled. They've been programmed. They're a programmed unit. Most of them don't even know how to freely think. I mean, I don't know if we have that on the new.org and trackers, but I sent some of the stuff that we need to get some of these posted. But even I had pictures where churches are saying that Satan is a free thinker. So in other words, if you don't follow the religious point of view of some pastor, minister, or the Pope, you're Satan. But if you go in German language, and if you look up this word Santa, Santa is Satan. That's in Germany. Germany doesn't celebrate Christmas, at least that I know of. And the only ones who do in Germany are Christians. Natives don't do that. The native Germans don't do that because they know that the word Santa is Satan. See, it's like you can read other things from other countries, the different words of what the meanings are, and you can be amazed at what you learn. And that's the whole point about all this. We're supposed to be educating each other and not dictating to one another. You know, that's like the producer brought up a good point with 9/11. When 9/11 fell, I mean, I was watching it. I went into the bar that morning, was talking to my boss. And, you know, we were dealing with some stuff with the bar. And so it's like, and all of a sudden we're watching the planes, and I said, damn, where's the jets? Where's the air? You know, and then when it hits the Pentagon, there's no tail to a plane. There's no, you know, motors. There's no wings. People go, oh, it blew up, it disintegrated. Now, a plane could not have gone through the Twin Towers because when the builders built it, it said it would stand even if a 747 hit. These are supposedly 767s. But when they hit, they should have had the fuselage or something in that building. But there was nothing, absolutely nothing. And holograms do work, folks. They do have that around. I mean, they even got invisible cloaks now. The military has. You know, they've got a material that you can wrap up and you're invisible. And that's a fact. The military has had that for 30 years. Of course, it came out, I think it was like 6 years ago, and said it's all new, but they had it 30 years ago. Because when I was in bodyguard work back in the 80s, I was listening about that, and shit, to get one of those things, it was extremely expensive back then. And so that's the one thing that we have in this country is fraud all around us. So the only way you can stop fraud is you, honorable, responsible. You know, and somebody said, oh, you got to have pride. Well, you know, and my pride sort of left the door when I was forced to put my fiance and the kids on the street by, you know, named people involved. So how are you supposed to have pride when you're forced to put your family on the street by the system and family? So that's the point that always gets to me. People always come up with these words that say you're supposed to stand. Well, they beat you down so they can mind control you, and so that way they can try to mentally put you in a hospital, so they can force you to take psychological medication going, oh, you have a head issue, you have mental issues. No, there are a lot of people. We don't have mental issues. We can see the truth. We know the truth. And we bring out the truth. So this is the one point that comes down to these circumstances, that it's you. Either you're willing to stand up and be honorable, or you're the problem. People, and I talk to people all the time, I'd much rather bury my head than deal with it. Well, you bury your head, you don't get nothing accomplished, and all you're doing is sticking your ass up in the air and letting everybody kick it and run over it. What a life that is. It's like, you know, I can't explain it, you know. I mean, when you go through some things that literally I've been through and you're still here, you know, I know what it's like because I suffocated twice to death. I personally know it, lived it. I mean, even the EMTs in my town, when they picked me up and brought me to the hospital, they were surprised I even lived when I suffocated to death. They couldn't believe I lived. They never expected me to live when I suffocated the 2 times. And so I was always wondering why that happened. You know, because I mean, I would say some of my issues are not from my body; they're from other circumstances. But I can't prove that one because I don't have all the medical expertise to know that one. I got more of the treaties and Constitution. So, but you got to look at what's going on around you. And believe me, I know I've been on in ICU and on my internet and putting out things. Even did a couple talk shows when I was in ICU myself. And nurses are looking at me. You're going to do what? So I got a talk show in 20 minutes. And they're like, okay. So shut the door. I don't want to be disturbed. And that's the one thing they were always amazed, because most people in the hospital have a door shut. Even when I go to the hospital and the examining places, you don't shut my door. I want to see what's coming. I want to hear what's going on. And so when you lock yourself behind closed doors so you can bury your head so you don't have to deal with what might happen, well, that's the problem. You're not prepared for anything that might happen. You got to learn how to react to the circumstances of the situation. So, I mean, that's one thing that with this information that's coming out, we got a new elections coming up. I am not a voter. I am not registered to the British government to vote. The 17th Amendment, or the 13th Amendment, some people say voting. But the 17th Amendment was designed, and if you read it, it's corporation members that can vote. And it doesn't say anything about immigration voting in this country whatsoever. Immigrants don't have a say in this country. That is the law. And I know I've proven their administrative rules to the Ninth Circuit Court, too. And the Circuit Court in Indiana, Illinois, a few other states, too. I mean, I sit here, I write stuff up, and I email it all the time out. I ask judges to prove their stance on this, and, are you committing treason? Here's the definition of treason in your job. And so that's the one thing that when you're writing this stuff up, you're not going after them per se personally. You just want them to be honorable and say, hey, I know what the situation is. Are you going to be honorable or not? That is the circumstances. And when you have honorable public servants, you have to be honorable. It's like I've been harassed from my boat being on my property, my soil, one of my boats, and, they say, well, we have an easement. Yeah, you have an easement, but it's still my soil. And when we put in the pipeline to cover up the old salmon run, because in my area, in my creeks where I'm living on the street, there used to be salmons. The older people around here, anything going back to the 1980s and earlier, had pictures of salmon spawning in the creeks up here that they build the houses around on. So what they did is they put in piping around here, those big plastic, black plastic pipes. And so when they put the one in my place, and I'm like arguing with them, and they're like, oh, it's only going to be, 2 feet. And I said, no, you got to do a minimum 3 feet. And I would say 3.5 would be the minimum because the water flow coming out from the hillsides. It used to not be so bad until they cut all the trees down above my hill, and they put all the new houses, and the new houses actually ran their drains right into my creek bed. So my water intake went 8 times the way it used to be when I first moved in on my soil. So that's the one thing you got to remember, water moves. It makes its own way. You can't stop water to make it its own way unless you put a concrete barrier up that's high enough. You think you can put up like a dam, but if it ain't concrete, it ain't going to work. Or unless it's soil that is, 50 yards thick. And that depends on how thick that is. That's why some of the dams are collapsed. And then the other point that how the state of Oregon destroyed dams that kept water and had actual fish runs. And then when they destroyed the dams, there's no fish anymore. Oh, we're going to destroy the dams, the fish are going to come back. No, they don't always come back. So that's the point. You already killed the run. They're not going to come back unless it's planted. And I mean with spawning native fish that are able to breed. Most of the fish in the state of Oregon that is planted by ODF&W are sterilized fish that can't breed. And then you wonder why you have no food. It's the state's problem. They know it because they want to capitalize on it. I know. I've been at hundreds of ODF and W meetings, hundreds of hours I spent there videotaping them and stuff. And the fraud. Well, see, it's up to you people to help, people like me standing up for this stuff. I mean, if we don't save each other, there ain't no saving. And that's what always gets to me. People go, "Whoa, pray to God." It takes men and women to save it. I mean, like I said, literally, I've been dead. I've suffocated to death. I never saw God. And everybody goes, "Oh, you should have saw the light or something." No. All I saw was when I suffocated to death, I went out. And when my eyes closed, it was black. And I didn't hear Satan or anything else. So that's where, I mean, I'm talking from living experience myself. And everybody keeps going, "Well, God showed up. God saved me." Well, that's in your mind. What your thoughts are, the way you were taught to think, the way you were bred up, and that way of basically mind control or not. The circumstances around you. Me, I grew up and always reality. I deal with reality. I see it, I know it. I can smell it, I know it. I taste it, I know it. So anything else, you can't go, above the land, air, and water, because that's above you. And even if you read the foundation of the Constitution or the British Constitution of Washington, D.C., air, water, soil, birds, anything above that is above you, doesn't exist. It's in their own paperwork. So when you talk about your rights or property rights, talk about your soil. Talk about your personal possessions. I own this. That's my property. It's like your children when they're born. It's your property. It's your duty to not register them if you don't want to register them. And if you want to register them, just realize that, you're registering them in a fashion that they can be taken any way they can take them. They don't care about you. Because without you, they have no living. They have no income off of the 1933 bankruptcy of the de facto dollar. That's why they call it a promissory to pay note. I promise to pay you someday, but nothing's ever paid. The only thing that's paid is dealing with House Resolution 192. And so, anyhow, I got you. Anyhow, let's open up the floor.
Are you sure you got me? I mean, it's.
I don't even know what time it is. Go ahead, let's open up the floor.
6:42. You're rambling.
Really
You've been rambling, yeah.
I've never done that before.
Ed ramble? Oh wait, guys. Now go back about a half an hour. He actually admitted that he doesn't know something. Ed Johnston admitted he didn't know something. He said he's only been paying attention. Yeah, you've only been paying attention to the legal and lawful stuff. You haven't been paying attention to the other. So you don't know it. You admitted it. All right, let's open up, guys.
All participants are unmuted.
Too much. So anybody would like to comment?
Hey, Ed.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I know a lot of people don't like to read. Remember, I brought that issue up that judges, lawyers, and police do not like to read. I know a lot of people themselves personally don't like to read, but if they would look up a lot of the stuff you are saying, it's not a conspiracy theory. This is all stuff that you can look up yourself and find, like the Executive Order 2040. I mean, it's right there, and it explains everything to you. Along with everything else you were saying, I looked up Executive Order 12803.
Oh yeah.
Signed by George Bush in 1992, where he privatized all roads, tunnels, bridges, electricity facilities, mass transits, rail transportation, airports, waterways, recycling, centers.
He did that after 9/11.
Yeah. Oh no, this is Herbert Walker Bush, the father, in 1992.
Oh yeah.
He's the one who did it. And they even privatized hospitals, prisons, schools, and housing. So I mean, this is exactly what you're talking about. The infrastructure that everybody's thinking, oh well, it's the law. Like my next door neighbors told me, they said, well, you got to play the game. Well, there's only one problem. Everything that they're saying that is lawful is not. They're just doing. It's like no running in a hall. Well, why? Because it's the law. It's not a law. It's a rule, and the Supreme Court's already ruled it, saying that all this stuff, statutes, rules, regulations, codes are not lawful. So, I mean, if people would actually look this stuff up and start reading a lot of this stuff, I mean, you'll see for themselves that basically what they're doing is they're giving you the information. All you have to do is read it and go, well, according to this and this and this. I mean, just like you're saying about filing criminal charges on these people or filing a 1099 on them, because that's exactly what they're doing. Just like, what was it? The probate court. I mean, our taxes go to pay for those courts. And now they want additional money just to get into the courts? That's double dipping.
Brister?
I mean, it's just that simple. Yeah.
Aren't you paying attention to what Ed says?
Yes.
Really? You just said our taxes are going to something here in America when Ed said all of our taxes are going to Puerto Rico. How's it going to something here whenever it's going to Puerto Rico and then the Vatican?
They're just writing it off of your birth certificate.
So it's not our taxes, it's our birth certificate bond that they're using.
Yeah, but if you also listen to what Ed said that we have to file the 1099s on these people. If not, what they're doing is like what he says, they're sticking it down their pocket and it's going to them. See, so that how can the IRS turn around and know what's going on if nobody's reporting it?
Right.
So,
the IRS is not a government agency. It's a private corporation that's hired to protect us through the circumstances of the Inspector General's report. And you go to the Inspector General's report to the IRS division, and that's where you want to file your claims and stuff with them on that.
And I believe that they're not even really, their headquarters is not, I'm pretty sure I read that their headquarters is not literally in the United States. It's in Puerto Rico.
It's in Washington, D.C.
Oh, I thought it was in Puerto Rico.
No, the Inspector General, the Inspector General is in Washington, D.C. And that includes the IRS court is in Washington, D.C. The money gets shipped off to Puerto Rico. So when you're paying your taxes, the tax guy, they send it to Puerto Rico for them to divide it between the King and Queen of England and the structure of the Vatican. But see, when I filed my paperwork for the city of Toledo in the Inspector General's report, you know, believe me, I know they freaked out because it didn't take them long to do what they did on my soil. Because they know what I filed, and like I said, you know, there's a buzz going around that in the buildings up there. Because they know it was filed lawfully, not legally. Because I'm not a corporation attorney or anything like that. You know, so that's the one thing. Go ahead.
I'll say, also earlier you brought up about judges. I think I sent that to you about so many judges have already been sent to prison because of what they've been doing, and it's happening. It's starting to, I don't know, generate momentum more and more judges are getting taken off the bench because of the illegal proceedings that they have been doing. And this includes, but not limited to, child abduction and something else with children. I can't remember what it was. But anyway.
Basically, it comes down to human trafficking and making false police reports.
Yeah. And knowing that that their rulings, like that one judge where a girl got raped and he gave the guy, 30 days in jail. Yeah, 30 days for raping a female.
I couldn't believe it, raping a child, and he got 30 days. And then 2 cops raped a 7 and 11-year-old, and they got no time at all. But they didn't live long after that either.
Yeah, but also officers, what do you call it? They're still getting away with murder because, I mean, they get paid because, and that's the thing, people are not, they keep hiring these lawyers and these officers are not paying for what they have done. People don't seem to get it. I looked it up, and the Houston Police Department and the Sheriff's Department are on Dun and Bradstreet. So that makes them a private corporation.
And a nonprofit.
Yes, and then the, was it Bar Association? They're also down in Dun and Bradstreet. All people have to do is look up this stuff and see that these people are actually private corporations, and they're over here. They're actually making a profit because they're getting paid from our tax dollars from the city. And then we are paying for military vehicles, military tactical vests and weapons, and because certain people, they've got their hands on these guns and stuff. Not the gun's fault. It's the person that's holding the gun. Because I mean, heck, I've got weapons myself and haven't.
Yeah, you have arms.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I have arms. They haven't moved. They haven't shot anybody all month, and still they sit there. But everybody wants to blame, the type of weapon we have or the arms that we have. It's not. It's the person that picked, or the man or woman that picks it up and uses it. It's what's willing to killing people.
Well, yeah, it's like the school shootings. 90% of them, everybody who was involved in the school shooting was on psychological medication. One of the side effects says you'll kill or spin out. I mean, you watch the TV commercials. They say it on TV. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I saw somebody did a research on that from the one from the 1960s, the one that got up on the Texas college and started shooting people, said that he was literally on psychotic drugs. And then they went down the list. Every last one of them that has been a shooting has had a mental issue and was on some type of psychotic drug that was given by a doctor. And then if you go back and look, just like was it Dr. Baker, who's a doctor, he's even said that a lot of the vaccinations that we give the kids, they're not healthy. They've got chemicals in them. And I've done safety, and I can tell you right now, I've looked up in SDS, and there is nothing that says that there's any safe dosage if you ingest it or anything. It tells you immediately contact, get medical help and stuff. So, but they're giving this to us in very small doses, and it's affecting people, and they keep saying, now, here's the conflict. I find stuff from CDC and FDA that turns around and says, yes, this stuff is harmful to people, and we shouldn't be giving it, but at the same time, you get some nitwit that says he's with the CDC or FDA saying, oh, yeah, I don't know why people are saying that. There's nothing wrong with it. Everybody should be getting vaccinated. They contradict themselves. But look up under CFR, and it tells you exactly this stuff will do harm to people's bodies. Don't you?
Well, you just saw the FDA came out with a deal about 3 months ago that says that they don't recommend any child getting vaccinated.
Yes, I did. I saw that. And the funny thing is they'll come back and turn around and say, oh, but you should be getting vaccinated. Oh, flu.
Oh, yeah. It's like when I was in the hospital, they're going, well, you need this flu shot. You need this immunization. You need that. And I looked at them and said, if you're willing to sign your house over to me if I have any issues, then I might consider it. They're like, well, no. And I said, well, then you're trying to kill me. Because you don't know the side effects, do you? Because everybody's body chemistry is different of how everything reacts. You know, that is the point that we got. I got some videos that I got to research, and we'll get them up on psychotic drugs. And I'm talking some of these videos I have go back when I was hanging out in the Senate and House. And they were being passed around through senators and congressmen, and most of the congressmen and senators said, oh, that's nothing to worry about. And they were passing administrative rules because they were passing it for income. And that's the one thing you got to remember. When they pass a bill, it's for income. Who has to pay the bill? It's like when you go to a restaurant, they pass you the bill because you ate, so you got services, so now you get a bill to pay. And that's what the House and Senate bill are.
Go
ahead.
I was going to say, there's one that everybody probably should know. There's called rotavirus, and I'm not sure if anybody's aware of it, but if they they should know that that's laced with fecal matter. So basically, if you stop and think about it and then walk it through, you go to the doctor, he suggests you get this rotavirus injection, you get it. Now, when he gives it to you, it literally makes you sick, or makes the child sick, okay? Now the child is sick. Now, you just paid the doctor's bill for making you sick. You go home, you get sick, you come back to who? The same person that made you sick.
Well, because you're a guinea pig. He's got to take your blood sample and register it.
Well, not only that, but then what he does is then turns around and gives you antibiotics. Now, if anybody does their research on antibiotics, you know that kills all the good bacteria of your gut. And so then to get better, you go pay a doctor, the same doctor again, to get this medication just so it can turn around and make it where it kills your good gut bacteria, so that now you turn around and end up gaining weight and everything else. So here you paid the doctor two different times, and he's the one who made you sick in the first place because he suggested something, and then you had to go because you were sick to buy this medication that's going to be harmful to you because pharma is making money off of this, and the doctor's getting a kickback.
Well, I'll tell you a story that I went through in California in '81 when I was working for the state. I ended up getting, I think they gave me a shot or something, and I ended up being so sick, and I ended up with 3 bleeding ulcers when I was, what the hell was that, 21, 22, 20, no, that was about 20. And so I ended up with 3 bleeding ulcers, and the doctor gives me this literally a bag of medication of antibiotics to take for this. So what I did is I started eating jalapenos. And yes, it hurt, burned like hell, both sides. And after 6 months, I go back to the doctor, and he's like, oh, you're all cleared up. When the blood test came up, this, that, and the other thing, he goes, the medication worked. I said, no, actually, we got rid of the medication, and I said I ate jalapenos. And I said, I never know Mexicans that have stomach problems because they eat hot foods. So, you know, we have the chemicals out there and food resources to do this, and people don't realize how much food chemicals are in your food by the structure of the food itself. So, but anyhow, anybody else got anything they would like to add? So nobody else wants to speak up. So why don't we go ahead and call it an evening, and we'll get some more stuff. I'll get those videos to you, and I get some stuff. And you liked what I sent you on the 1871 corporation, didn't I? I believe I sent that to you.
I don't know. I'll have to look it up.
Okay, I'll resend it to you. And then I'll send you some other stuff on the drug stuff, too, that, you know, people need to pay attention with, like you're saying, too, what the doctors are giving you. And like I was saying when I was in the ICU unit this year and last year, I'm literally on my laptop in ICU, and they're going, we want to give you this medication. I said, typed in the medication, and I said, well, I got to do the research to find out the MSD sheet, the lawsuits, death rate, and the doctors were literally impressed, and so were the nurses. They're going, you actually do this? I said, that's all I do is research. It's my body, not yours. I own my body. You don't own me. So, and that is the point that people got to realize, that either you own you or you don't own you. So when you talk to your public employees, even doctors, because doctors are a 501c3, that's a public employee, it's a tax write-off. Read what the structure of tax write-off and what public employees and donations are. You know, and I know I posted that up, and I'll get that back out to a few people, and we'll get some of this stuff put up on the talk show tonight of what we've been talking about. I'll put the 1871 contracts and stuff up, too. But, and you got to remember, House Resolution 192, you got to file this stuff. And so that is the point. When you get this stuff, and, you know, I got to find this other paperwork I got from the federal government that was all in red surroundings. They were not boxed, because people say, well, if you box it in, no, the federal government says don't box it in, write it in red or with your seal. And they mean your thumbprint, and it says right on the thing, your right thumbprint in red or blood. It says it right in that contract. And so that's what gets to me, because a few days ago, after this other incident happened here, my computer literally shut down and went to Windows 10. And I'm like, how the hell did that do? I'm literally typing a letter up, and it goes, doodly-leak, and then it goes back, and then it goes restart, and it's Windows 10. I'm like, how the hell did that happen? So, I mean, you know, people say, oh, they don't have this technology. Folks, they got the damn technology. Quit living with your head in the sand. You know, and most people have these issues, and they just write it off and don't think about it. So that, you know, oh, well, I'll just replace it. I just do this. No big deal. It is a big deal, because it costs you out of your pocket of your federal debt notes, even gold and silver, if that's the way you're paying for stuff. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that's going on in this craziness that we're living here, and people don't get it. You know, we are not a foreign country. And this is the one thing that people say, oh, the United States is open to the world. No, we are not open to the world. Even the state federal law says we're not open to the world. And when Trump's speaking out on it, and the Democrats and everybody's panicking, because like the Democrats were trying to, Pelosi and all of them, were trying to go after him on immigration, and they realized they couldn't. He has the lawful authority and legal authority over it, because he has to honor the treaties, then the Constitution. So the treaties are the law of the land. Then the Constitution is a private contract that's supposed to protect the treaties from to be ruined, and they're supposed to protect us, and that's why you have statute codes and administrative rules that are protecting us, and that's a separation compared to the corporation that they want to rape, rob, and pillage. So, I mean, it's just looking at this stuff, how it works. So, anyhow, why don't we go ahead and wrap it up tonight, and then we'll get into more next week, because I got a whole bunch of stuff I'll be providing the people, too, here this week. So, but that's the whole point, is proper education, and we got to pass some of this proper education to our elected and public servants who are honorable. Because if you notice, we are seeing changes in this country. We are finally seeing judges going to federal prison, and they're not announcing the judges, because if they just replaced 150 judges, federal judges, just in the last couple of months, there's been over 100 that have been convicted for other criminal activities. but the media ain't going to publicize it. But you'll see it on Facebook. Sometimes you'll see a blurb in the news media about this judge, that judge, or even a clerk. A couple of clerks have been indicted here lately. So they're finally standing up and doing something. But when you see this, it doesn't hurt to email those people who did that and just say thank you. You don't get into any elaboration or extent. Just say thank you for doing your servitude. They get it when you send them those little quick notes like that. You don't have to get technical with them. We appreciate you're doing your honor of oath or something. And that matters to some of these people. So with that, why don't we just say, may the Great Spirit bless you. May Mother feed you and clothe you. And that's the one thing. Without the Great Spirit, Mother Earth, and the soil, and living plants and food resources, we have nothing. Because, like I said, we already got the radiation in the sea. We got the radiation in the Columbia River here. Jacoba, we got a whole bunch of radiation plants, and everybody keeps going, let's do nuclear. And it's like, oh, we can control it. No, you cannot control nuclear no matter what. Once it's released, it's done. You can't go back and close the lid on it. Now, I still get concerned when Japan's talking about blowing up Fukushima and let it all go in the ocean. So, anyhow, you guys have a blessed evening. We'll continue next Saturday, and we'll get more research out and just read this stuff and, cross-reference it. Always cross-reference this stuff. You'll find, different organizations or stuff will speak against it, and so ask them what, why, and how. Prove it. Prove it by historical records, not by some professor saying, this is what I said. So anyhow, you folks have a blessed evening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Are you done, or are you going to keep going?
Oh, yeah.
You're going to keep going? Is that it? I'll shut up.
No, I'm not going anywhere. The floor is yours.
So after about 10 minutes of saying you're going to it's time to shut the show down, you finally decide, okay. Well, in that case...
Oh, God! You just speak up anytime you want, you know it.
I know it. Now, before we close this out, and I'll just mention it right now because I have a warning label to put at the end of this show, and I'll verbalize it. I'll fine-tune it in the future, but it just came to me. So today is Saturday, September 14th, 2019. It is currently 1905, but basically, for you guys who don't know military, that's 7:05 p.m. So, Pacific Standard Time. But here is the warning. Now, I might put this in with the really fast speaking eventually, but right now I want to verbalize it perfectly. Warning. Listening to disclaimers by Ed might open awareness of law, might make you realize you're a slave, might upset your sensibilities. Side effects may include headache from all the information, nausea from realizing you've been duped, temporary blindness from the light bulb turning on, irresistible urge to research family tree, urge to research organic constitution, urge to file your rights in an affidavit. If you receive any of these symptoms, immediately nut up and file or shut up. Keep listening to Ed to grow thicker skin and become free. How was that for a warning label?
I think that's pretty damn cool.
All right, with that, guys, we'll hopefully catch you next week.
You've been waiting to say that for a while.
What? No, I just wrote that up.
I know that just pop in your head. You've been that's been going around your head for a while.
No, this I just wrote up while I was waiting for you to close the show down.
Oh, okay. Well, then we got to put up a screen deal when the show is running, so it runs.
We'll do that. All right. So with that, guys, we'll see you next week, unless Ed decides to bequeath me all his knowledge all at once, which in that case it'll just be me, and Ed will be dead.
No.
Oh,
ain't
okay.
my time yet.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, we'll catch you next week.
Yeah, it's like when I tried to put the blanket over my head and I stood up and I said, it ain't my time yet. And they're like, huh?
Damn
what
it.
do you think you're doing?
No, they're all going, damn it. All right.
I still told you the last time I got out of it, all I could hear is Kate Brown's, in my ear going, how the fuck did he live? I didn't specifically. I know that woman's voice, so.
Oh, yeah. All right. With that, guys, we'll see you next week. Have a good night.